This morning, Texas districts consider year-round school and virtual classes, but they want more support from Austin. The board president from Fort Worth is with us to explain why. MJ Hagar now fully focused on John Cornyn. How much will her campaign require, though, and can she unite Texas Democrats? Two of our questions for Hagar when she joins us in a moment. Airlines set to potentially lay off thousands of Texans. Are we any closer to another stimulus check? We'll ask Congressman Mark Vesey. Plus, Texas Democrats with record turnout for a runoff last week. Is this another sign of the state's changing politics?
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
And good Sunday morning to you. Before we sit down with our guest this morning, let's get you caught up on some of the political headlines we are watching all across the state. The Texan who ran President Trump's re-election campaign has been demoted. Donald Trump tweeted that Brad Parscale there is no longer his campaign manager. Parscale's from San Antonio. He will stay on as a senior advisor, but Trump has had a rough couple of months. The pandemic, the debacle around the Tulsa, Oklahoma rally, and poll numbers showing that even Republican states like Texas could be close in November. Texas Governor Greg Abbott on the defensive at the state Republican convention. He told attendees at the virtual event this weekend that requiring face masks was the last thing he wanted to do. Several county parties, though, have censured the governor. They think that face masks should be an individual choice. And State Senator Royce West said he is not yet ready to endorse MJ Hagar. Hagar defeated West last week in the primary runoff for U.S. Senate. West told us he first wants to discuss some issues in private with her. West would not say, though, what divides them. But if MJ Hagar is to have a chance against John Cornyn, she needs Royce West's supporters. Hagar has to at least try to unite the party behind her, and she doesn't have much time either. The November election is a little more than 100 days away. We spoke to Hagar fresh off her victory as the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate. MJ, congratulations on the win. Let's begin with November. John Cornyn, $14 million in the bank. I think you have $1.6 million is the latest I read. How much money is it going to take to defeat Cornyn in November?
You know, he's got definitely well-funded allies that have a very profit-driven reason to keep him in a position to keep legislating for their profit margins. But I don't think it's going to be enough. We're going to raise the resources. We have built a grassroots army. We've raised millions of dollars with an average online donation of $23. So our fundraising looks very different from his, but we are going to raise the resources that it's going to take to not only win our race, but run a good, strong, coordinated campaign that's going to deliver good results up and down the ballot. But really, it's the people of Texas who it doesn't take really that much money at all to show them how John Cornyn is failing them. And they're going to stand up and make sure that our voices are heard in November.
Do you have a figure you think it might take to at least get on TV in the major markets in the state?
No, I really think that more and more people are better informed. More and more people are pulling information instead of having to have that information pushed at them. We need to raise millions of dollars, don't get me wrong. But we've already shown that we're going to be able to do that. We're going to continue being a strong fundraising team. And, you know, I think that John Cornyn advertises really well for our race when he opens his mouth or tweets on social media or tells people that he doesn't think kids can get COVID. You know, so he's helping us a lot.
Let's talk about the most recent polling we have seen. The Dallas Morning News and UT Tyler did a poll, and in the poll, it still had Cornyn at 37%. I think you at 26%. He's still 11 points ahead of you. Where do you see a path to victory right now since we're 100 days out?
Yeah, that was really before we even started going up statewide with some of the messaging that we've been putting out. I think that those numbers are really alarming for him, and we see it in his reactions now. For a 3-term incumbent incumbent senator, for him to have a 36% approval rating and for him to have such a low poll himself, at me being a newcomer and relatively unknown, I should not be within 11. And we've seen a lot closer polling, by the way, also as well. So we're very confident. We knew that this was going to take a lot of work, and we're actually ahead from where we thought we would be.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about too. Give us an idea of what your internal polling shows since that was dated.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just internal polling. I mean, I've seen public polling that shows us within 7. That's exciting, especially since we really just got started against him. He's already been spending a lot of money meddling in our primary, even that shows that his numbers show the same thing. That's encouraging when you see that our numbers probably say the same thing as his, because he's already, spending so much money meddling in our primary. He's been in politics for nearly 4 decades, and he's never, to my knowledge, ever had to meddle in his opponent's primary before. So he knows he's under threat.
Well, let's talk about the primary for a moment, the primary runoff. You clearly had the most votes on Super Tuesday. You were on TV in the major markets. Royce West had really hardly any money. Why do you think he ended up with 47% of the vote in the primary runoff in a July runoff?
He had a lot of infrastructural Democratic support across the state from legislators that he's worked with. And John Cornyn was spending a lot of money on his behalf, also advertising that, his endorsements from really amazing leaders like Sheila Jackson Lee. So I'm just really pleased, not only with the over 40,000 votes that we're leading by right now, but I'm very pleased if you look at the map of the counties that we won, they are just corner to corner across the state. And that is more important. I think that's really reflective of our performance coming up in the general, to be able to turn out communities that have not been, engaged in the past. We drove tens of thousands of miles around the state before the primary and before COVID kind of kicked in, and you see the results of that investment in grassroots groups, but also in communities and talking to people outside of the political echo chamber.
Yeah, and the final vote count we've seen so far shows you with a 40,000 vote lead, clearly a win there. But I'm curious, are you going to reach out to Royce West and ask for his endorsement?
Oh, I mean, we're constantly working to get great people elected up and down the ballot. Backstage of several events, Royce and I always talked about the need to come together after the primary and after the runoff. So I'm very confident that we're going to do that, because there is too much on the line. This isn't personal. We got to get kids out of cages. We got to get Texans access to healthcare. This is a very important election. There's a lot riding on this, and we have an opportunity to send home a DC politician and deliver an ass-kicking combat vet. And so I know that we're going to do what it takes to get it done.
Well, you said this isn't personal. Royce West told us that he wants to sit down and talk to you first about this. Do you regret the primary runoff being so contentious?
We kept things really positive. You have to show people that you're going to defend yourself and stand up for yourself. But we've been focused on the general the whole time for the last year and a half. In fact, it really was something that a lot of the other people in the primary kept commenting on, that their frustration that I was so focused on the general. I think that that's important. I think that I have to set an example on how we should be running races in the future, and how we should be focusing primaries on policy and on differences in policy, or make your best case to take on the incumbent and let the voters decide. So I'm really not worried, because when we were out on the road talking to folks, they know that too much is on the line. That's why you're seeing a surge and record-breaking turnout amidst a global pandemic. I mean, there's a lot for John Cornyn to be worried about in the numbers, and it's the same things that have us so optimistic.
All right. MJ Hagar, congratulations again on the primary runoff win.
Thanks so much. Take care, Jason.
Let's back up for a moment now and take a closer look at last week's runoff election. Texas Democrats did something they haven't done in 30 years. They got people to the polls. 955,000 people voted in the Democratic runoff. That's the most in the party's history in this state. And that says something when you consider it happened in July and we are in the middle of the pandemic. But do the numbers really suggest momentum might carry through to the fall? Well, Abby Livingston is in for Ross Ramsey this morning. Abby is the Washington, D.C. bureau chief for the Texas Tribune. Abby, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
The outlook on several congressional races changed on Friday from solid Republican to likely Republican. Tell us where these are and why.
So there are 3 districts, and the way these things work is in Washington, there's a couple of analysts who do this. They're sort of like the Moody's of congressional races. And so the 3 seats are Van Taylor's seat, which is north of Dallas in the suburbs, Collin County, Ron Wright, which is Arlington-based, and it goes down to the rural area south of the Metroplex, and Roger Williams' district, which is basically, it runs from Cleburne down to Austin, west of Interstate 35.
And is it surprising at all that these predictions were made?
Yes and no, because I think the theme of this election is suburbs, 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 and their move toward the Democratic Party. Yeah. The thing I'm going to caution, this is likely Republican. So this means they're probably going to stay Republican, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to lose. But that still has implications because each of these members, like every member of Congress, has an obligation to help raise money for colleagues elsewhere in the country. And if you're worried about your own district, you're probably going to start sending that money into your own district, into the DFW media market, which is one of the most expensive in the country.
Yeah, good points there, Abby, as always. Back to you in just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, airlines set to potentially lay off thousands of Texans. Are we any closer to another federal stimulus check? Congressman Mark Vesey is with us when we return. Plus, the situation around schools remains fluid. Districts say they want more flexibility from the governor. The president of Fort Worth ISD is standing by to explain why. You're watching Inside Texas Politics. Thousands of Texans work for the airlines. United, with that huge presence in Houston, says it might need to lay off 30,000 people. Dallas-based Southwest warned it has more employees than it likely has flights for this fall. And Fort Worth-based American Airlines announced a few days ago it might need to get rid of 25,000 workers. Our next guest represents a wide swath of the Metroplex. Congressman Mark Vesey is a Democrat, and he joins us from his home in Fort Worth. Congressman, thanks for the time. Let's start with the potential layoffs by airlines and the second stimulus check. I know Republicans want the stimulus to go to anybody who makes $40,000 and less. Democrats want it to go to $75,000 salaries and less, which is what it was last time. How much longer, though, do you think it will take to negotiate this?
Hopefully we'll have something soon because, we're getting to the point now where people are really going to start to panic. I mean, if you're hearing what people are saying on the streets, I know that they're very concerned, for instance, that their unemployment is about to run out, but they have expenses, they have bills, and people need to be able to keep food on the table, even people that make $75,000 a year. So it's serious. We need to move on this very quickly. And try to take the politics out of it and help people and help families because it's going to be critical.
Well, let's talk about politics for a moment. The turnout for the Democratic primary runoff last week was huge, broke the record for all-time turnout for a runoff. 2 years ago, though, Beto O'Rourke was on the ballot. He was obviously a magnet for Democrats. What makes you think that this year, without a magnet like him on there, that it's going to draw out even more Texas voters?
Oh, the draw is getting rid of Trump. Like, that's the main attraction. It's clear that people are fed up. They've had it. You look at the latest polling that show 2-1 that Americans don't believe in the way that he's handled the COVID virus. His response has been lackluster. I mean, people are ready to see Trump go. And I think that you're going to see that the number one motivating factor for people to go and vote when they leave exit polls this year is going to be that they wanted to get rid of Trump. Remember that I said that here. When you go and look at the exit polls in November after the elections, you're going to see it's going to say, we wanted to get his butt out of here.
Do you think it's going to draw out new voters, though?
I absolutely think it's going to draw new voters, and he should be concerned because he can't win the presidency without Texas. You look at the over 2 million new voters in the state of Texas. Many of them, the vast majority of them, either Hispanic or African-American or Asian. And, from all the comments that he's made about Mexicans crossing the border to African-Americans and S-hole countries to trying to stop people from coming over on student visas. I mean, the groups that are growing here and that are the vast majority, again, of those new registered voters in the millions are going to vote against him.
Congressman, we have about 30 seconds left here. I do want to ask you about the polling that we have seen. Yeah. The most recent poll that's out there on the Texas race shows that Biden is leading President Trump in Texas. 30 seconds left here. Do you really believe that?
Oh, God, I have no doubt that Biden is leading Trump in Texas. Again, I told you that people are fed up. They want to see Trump out of here. And they're taking a good look at Biden. They like what he stands for. They like his personality. They like his down-to-earth nature. And they think that he is going to clean up the big mess that Trump left behind in his swamp.
Gotcha. Congressman Mark Vesey, thanks as always for the time.
Hey, thanks, Jason.
In Dallas, in Fort Worth, in Houston, in Austin, and San Antonio, school superintendents are united on one thing. They need more flexibility on how to start school this fall. The superintendent sent Governor Abbott a letter saying they want to decide how to handle children in their own communities. And one of the districts signing on to that letter, as we mentioned, was Fort Worth ISD. And joining us this morning is Cinto Ramos. He is the board president at Fort Worth ISD. Cinto, good to see you.
Good to see you, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. The governor responded on Friday. Are you pleased with what he said?
For now, absolutely. It's a response that we had hoped that we would get. And to just give you a little bit of context, the board presidents from all those districts you mentioned, which we're calling ourselves the Big Ten, knew that we had to use our voice and come together to advocate and support our superintendents. For what you just said, we need flexibility. And we need stability, and stability also in the form of funding to make sure that we can open our doors.
And one of the things the governor said is the schools will get funding for both in-person attendance and virtual attendance. That was one of the big hang-ups. You guys weren't sure if you'd get the state funding if you did online classes.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the unknowns were too many, and as we're preparing to make decisions, we need that local autonomy. We need to be able to make those decisions while also acknowledge and recognize that we're the bigger districts. And we may not have the same concerns as small or rural, so we only spoke for what was true for us.
How confident are you that students will actually return to campuses at all this fall?
You know, from a board member lens and being a parent as well, I don't know. I don't have those answers, and I think that anyone who says that they have those answers, I really would want to I would want to talk to them. The reality for us is that we can't let a health crisis become a generational educational crisis. And we know that in Fort Worth ISD, we have 89% children of color. We have low socioeconomic status. The return to school literally means lives. And so we're not taking that lightly. And that's it. We're just completely focused on the safety and the well-being of not only our students, but also our teachers and our folks that work in our school system.
One of the things the governor said, he said that local school districts retain autonomy to set their calendar. There's a lot of talk about year-round school that's even floated at Dallas ISD. Is that something that you would explore at Fort Worth ISD?
Absolutely. We're going to explore any and every option for what will fit in Fort Worth. And our board is laser focused. Our superintendent is laser focused. So nothing is off the table right now. All
right. Cinto Ramos, the board president at Fort Worth ISD. Thanks for the time today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. As if educators don't have enough to consider, should children be required to wear masks when they return to school? It's become a political issue and one that we'll discuss coming up next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Abby is back. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA, joins us each week. Abby, let's start with you. A little more than 100 days to the election. The U.S. Senate race is finally set here in Texas. MJ Hagar versus John Cornyn. MJ is 24 years younger than him. Is that going to be a factor at all that anyone plays to in this race?
It could well be, but I'd also watch for gender to be an issue. I think she's going to run hard trying to convince maybe suburban women who traditionally voted Republican to come over to her side, and that may be what decides the election.
And Bud, we see they've already been attacking each other, but she has what she's been running on for both of her campaigns is her military service, which is you can't argue with.
She's a veteran, and she's an outsider, which is the big deal, is that she's constantly an outsider candidate. But John Cornyn's biggest problem is that he's going to have to run on his own. The Republican Party in Texas is in complete disarray. We saw it this weekend with their convention. Jason, this is the first time in 30 years, I'll say this, the Democratic Party in Texas is more organized than the Texas Republican Party. I can't believe I've ever seen that.
Bernadine, did you hear what he said?
I heard what he said, and I totally agree with him. And I think what Abby mentioned in terms of the suburban women, that's going to be an issue with Cornyn because Hegar is going to draw those women. It will be an opportunity for them to send a woman from this area to Congress. and I mean to the Senate, I'm sorry, and that's going to be a big worry for him. And as we've mentioned also, the Republicans are in disarray.
Well, Abby, can Texas Republicans get their act together in the next 3.5 months?
Well, it's getting pretty late, and we're seeing manifestations of this in other areas. It's in fundraising. It's in, and I think the central question of Texas Republicans is, they've had such dominance over the state for so long. Do they know how to run general election campaigns, and do they know the warning signs?
Yeah, that's a good point, because they always win primaries and they move on to the general and usually don't face anybody. But let's switch off to our other topic, face masks. This debate has now shifted to schools. Some parents want their kids back in class but don't want face masks required. Is there more pressure, you think, to open up or to remain virtual with classes?
You know, I think a lot of these school board members, particularly in outlying suburban rural districts, are under great pressure to open up the schools and some of them to not have masks. We saw polls like in Aledo, where 80% of the parents want their kids put back in school. Basically, they want to get rid of their kids and send them back in school. But also, 30% of them are opposed to masks, and they want their kids back in school and not wearing masks. And they're not really thinking about what the teachers want. The school board trustees have to balance both.
And Bernadine, we heard from Cinto Ramos a little earlier in this program here. What do you think? Is this going to be an urban versus rural situation?
I think it's going to be parents, kids versus politicians, because the parents are clear. Those who think that their kids can go back safely to school, they want their kids in school. And the mask issue, you're looking at 30%. So it's going to be how you can balance what the kids need if they can go back safely, what the parents need, as opposed to how the politicians deal with it.
And Abby, final question for you in the final moments. Obviously, we're 3.5 months away, but is this going to be that much of an issue? Will people be talking about this come November?
I mean, it could be. I mean, I think this pandemic, and it could manifest in different ways that we're not even thinking of right now. Yeah. I think this is one of the most consequential political events I've ever seen.
All right, guys, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching as well. Inside Texas Politics back again next Sunday with another episode. Hope you can join us in. Have a good day.